Hi, Stories Channel here.
And today we are going through a 2007 sci-fi horror called The Invasion. The movie starts with a panicked woman named Carol who is searching for pills in a pharmacy. Then, we see a space shuttle Patriot crash, and it caused a lot of destruction all over the United States. People are reluctant to touch the debris after the explosion, thinking that it is contaminated. Tucker Kaufman, a CDC director, investigates the crash and gets infected the night he returns to his home. A weird cellular condensation is seen over his face while he sleeps. Right after that, Oliver, who is Kaufman's and his ex-wife, psychiatrist Carol Bennell's son, is freaked out because of a nightmare. Carol comforts him and gives him his pills before going to bed with him. The next morning, Carol sees the custody papers and is reluctant to let Oliver live with his father. She talks to Kaufman, who attempts to convince him to have custody of Oliver, but Carol does not agree. After Carol drops Oliver off at school, she meets his best friend Dr. Ben Driscoll, who tells her that a great number of scientists have given resignations as they think that the shuttle crash happened with a purpose. Then, Carol shares her problems and says that she doesn't want Kaufman to take Oliver away from her. However, Dr. Ben makes her understand that Kaufman has the right to meet his son. He drops her off at her office and reminds her about the upcoming dinner party. In the next scene, Carol meets her patient, Wendy Lenk, who says that her husband, Richard, is not behaving normally. Their dog, Bobo, also sensed the change and attacked him, but Richard finished him off and acted emotionlessly. Carol prescribes her new medications and asks her to visit her if her husband behaves like that again. At a neighborhood Halloween party, one of Oliver's friends, Andy, is attacked by a neighbor's dog. Later, Carol finds out that Andy is alright and the blood mark on his neck may be from the dog. She talks to his mother, Pam, about his behavior and says that he seems a little detached. Just then, Carol finds an unusual patch of skin on Oliver's hand. She takes it to Dr. Ben's hospital where his colleague, Dr. Stephen Galliano, examines it. Next, we see that Kaufman briefs the scientists about the new flu-spreading virus that is threatening people's life. He suggests that to stop the virus, an inoculation program must be conducted. Then, a couple of servants are seen to be spitting into the tea that is being served to the people in the conference. Mr. Lenk arrives at Carol's office, asking about Wendy, who had told him that she will visit Carol that day. Then, Carol calls Wendy and learns that she is on her way to Carol's office but stops when she comes to know that Richard is waiting for her. She tells Carol that she cannot come to her office and says that she will be living at her sister's home for a few days, indicating that she wants to stay away from Richard. Later that night, while Oliver and Carol are on their way to Kaufman's home, they witness an accident of a panicked woman who screams and warns everyone of an upcoming danger, but suddenly she is run over by a car. Carol approaches the woman's body and tells the cop in the tunnel that she wants to give her statement as she and her son have witnessed everything. But the cop somehow makes her stay out of the matter, telling her that she will be called for interrogation if needed. Carol then drops off Oliver at Kaufman's home to spend the weekend. She asks him to call her often and take his pills on time. In the next scene, Carol and Dr. Ben arrive at the party where they meet Czech diplomat Dr. Henrik Belicek and his wife Ludmila. Later, they are introduced to Russian diplomat Yorish, who debates with Carol about the dark nature of humans. Dr. Belicek and Ludmila adore Carol and Dr. Ben, saying that both would make a perfect couple. Dr. Ben drives Carol home and they both get close to each other, but Carol steps back and says that she doesn't want to ruin their friendship. Later, when she returns home, Carol is attacked by a Census Department worker who tries to break into her home. Carol somehow protects herself by not letting the census taker inside and calls Dr. Ben to come over. The next morning, he advises her to stay home, but Carol says that she has a lot of patients to see that day. While she is on her way, she notices a few people in the car, looking at her strangely. She also sees people on the road who seem to be standing like they feel nothing. Carol feels weird and enters her office where she finds that her patients have canceled their appointments. She then calls Wendy, who hasn't visited her in a long time. Richard picks up the call and tells her that Wendy is asleep and will call Carol later. Carol suspects that Richard may have done something wrong to her. She realizes the things Wendy said to her about Richard and searches on the internet about the strange behaviors of people that she has seen so far, including her son and his friend Andy. She searches on the internet and finds that a lot of people have noticed the same strange behaviors. Just then, her secretary, Carly, seems to be behaving unusually and appears with a cup of tea, and Carol asks her to call Kaufman. She then receives a call from Dr. Ben, calls her to the hospital where Dr. Galliano tells her that the patch of skin has been examined, revealing that it is a spore that takes over the brain during REM sleep. It gets into the human body and reprograms the genetic makeup. During this investigation, Ludmila calls Dr. Ben, informing him about diplomat Yoroshi's strange behavior. In the next scene, Dr. Ben, Dr. Galliano, and Carol show up at Dr. Bilesek's home where they find Yoroshi sleeping in bed with cellular condensation on his body. When Carol is about to take Yoroshi's picture, he attacks her. Dr. Ben somehow handles the situation and Yoroshi crawls on the floor, after which he vomits a fluid and loses his life. Dr. Galliano decides to take his blood samples while Carol rushes to Kaufman's home to get Oliver. She finds Kaufman having a meeting with his colleagues who look at her strangely. Kaufman tells her that Oliver is doing fine and is at Jean's home. While she packs Oliver's things, Kaufman and his infected colleagues surround Carol, and then Kaufman explains to her that after being infected, she will also be like them. He tells her that the inoculated humans don't have irrational emotions and so they offer a better world. He then holds her to the ground and spurts his saliva on her to infect her with the virus. Carol somehow makes her way out and rushes towards Jean's home, where his mother is shown finished off by the infection. While driving near Kaufman's area, she meets with an accident and gets out of her car. The people around start running after her, but she somehow escapes and screams for help on the road. She then arrives at a subway station. She gets on the train where she finds the passengers with their strange behavior. She receives a video message from Oliver who asks her to help him as Kaufman has taken him somewhere. Suddenly, a man on the train reveals to her that if she wants to keep herself safe from the infection, then she will have to act emotionless or else the infected people will attack her. Just then, a few infected people enter the train and attack those people. Carol somehow gets out of the train and also tries to get a girl off it, but the people attack her too. At the station, Carol encounters an infected man and finishes him off before he could attack her. She comes on the road where people are forced by cops to be inoculated with the virus. Further, an uninfected cop notices the sweat on her face and asks her to go away, indicating that the inoculated ones don't sweat. She goes to her home and doesn't find Oliver there. Then, she returns to Dr. Ben at the Belichick's house, where Dr. Galliano reveals that the virus is activated in the body during REM sleep. They make sure that none of them goes to sleep to protect themselves from the effect of the virus in case they are infected. Dr. Ben decides to go with Carol to find Oliver, while Dr. Galliano and his assistant plan to reach Fort Detrick to find a cure for the virus. Just then, Dr. Henrik Belichick returns home with more transformed people intent on infecting anyone in the house. Before they could attack, the group leaves the house. On their way, Carol and Ben see Wendy, who is being forced by the cops for the inoculation. She says that she is infected as she has slept too. Carol notices that Wendy is fine even after being infected, realizing that she may be immune to the virus. They take a cop's car and arrive at Carol's office to check Wendy's medical records, where Dr. Ben finds that she had a brain-affecting illness such as encephalitis and edema, which are immune to the virus because her previous illnesses prevent the virus from affecting her brain matter. Carol realizes that his son also had such illness and wonders if he is also immune to the virus, as he has been contacting her even after being with his infected father. Dr. Ben calls Galliano and learns that he has arrived at Fort Detrick, where he and the scientists are attempting to find a vaccine for the virus. Oliver texts Carol his location and she learns that Kaufman has taken him to his mother's home in Baltimore. Galliano tells them to get out of there as the cops will seal that part of the city to inoculate people. Carol reveals that she has been infected by Kaufman and she fears that she will fall asleep and lose Ben and Oliver. After that, Dr. Ben somehow manages to drop off Carol before the city is sealed, and then the duo gets separated. Carol reaches the station and gets on the train to Baltimore. She meets Jean, who says that Carol is pretending to be infected. However, Carol tells him that she will try to sleep alone in the washroom. After a while, Jean comes in to check her and Carol seemingly removes the cellular condensation off her body, indicating that the virus is active. Kaufman receives Carol and Jean at the station and takes them to his mother's home. While Kaufman is away, Carol gets the chance to see Oliver. He tells her that he has been sleeping but still unaffected. Just then, Jean shows up and learns that Carol has been pretending to be infected. To protect herself and Oliver, Carol knocks Jean and manages to escape with Oliver. Kaufman and his colleagues run after them, but the duo hides in an abandoned place. However, Kaufman chases them but is finished off by Carol eventually. Right after that, Carol and Oliver arrive at a pharmacy where Carol takes a few injections and pills to keep herself from going to sleep. She calls Dr. Ben and tells him her location. Meanwhile, Oliver tries to open the door of that pharmacy's storeroom, but Carol goes inside alone and finds a few unconscious infected people. She grabs a gun from one of them and locks the door. While Oliver is asleep, she takes more pills to stay awake but falls asleep eventually. Meanwhile, the infected employees wake up and try to get out. Oliver wakes up to the noise and saves Carol. In the next scene, Dr. Ben arrives, but Carol finds that he is infected too. He attempts to persuade her to join the new society where there is no war or crime. He then opens the door to the infected employees and reveals that the people like Oliver, who are immune to the virus, cannot survive among them. Carol finishes off the people when they attempt to approach Oliver. She shoots Dr. Ben in the leg and takes Oliver in his car that is further attacked by a lot of infected people. But finally, they are picked up by helicopter and flown to the medical center. Then, a vaccine is created. Inoculations are made worldwide and the alien virus is eliminated within a year. Dr. Galliano addresses the media and reveals that the ones who get vaccinated will not have the memory of the events that happen. In the final scene, Oliver and Jean, who have now been vaccinated, leave for school. Ben has been vaccinated and he has no idea of the events that happened as he reads the newspaper. The world reverts to its normal state and the movie ends here. Thanks for watching, guys.